The crisp autumn air bit at Catherine Salvatore's cheeks as she hurried down the sidewalk, her worn teacher's bag slung over her shoulder. It had been a long day of spelling tests and glitter glue, and all she wanted was the warmth of her small apartment. She took a shortcut through the narrow alley between Mr. Gable's bakery and the old laundromat, a path she'd walked 100 times. That's when she heard it. Not the usual city sounds, but a sharp, frightened whisper. "Please, I have nothing for you." Catherine froze. Deeper in the alley, shadowed by an overflowing dumpster, two large men in dark jackets had cornered an elderly woman. The woman, clutching her pearl-handled handbag like a shield, looked tiny and terrified. "The bag, lady. And the necklace." "Don't make this difficult," one of the men grunted, his voice like grinding stones. Catherine's heart hammered against her ribs. Every sensible thought screamed at her to run, to call for help, to be invisible. But then she saw the woman's eyes, wide with a pure, animal fear. They were the same eyes of a little boy in her class when a bigger kid stole his lunch money. And in that moment, Catherine Lombardi, the poor teacher, stopped being just a bystander. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She planted her feet, took a deep breath, and unleashed her most powerful weapon, her teaching voice. "Excuse me." The sound, sharp and authoritative, cracked through the alley like a whip. Both men flinched, spinning around in surprise. They saw a young woman in a simple coat, her brown hair escaping its messy bun, looking more like an angry librarian than a threat. "What do you two think you are doing?" she demanded, striding forward as if she owned the alley. She pointed a finger at them. "Harassing a senior citizen? That is completely unacceptable behavior. You should be ashamed of yourselves." The men were so stunned they took a step back. This wasn't in their script. The old woman seized the moment. With a surprising burst of speed, she darted past her stunned attackers and clutched Catherine's arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "Let's go, dear," the woman whispered, her voice trembling. Catherine didn't need telling twice. She kept her fierce gaze on the two men, walking backwards slowly at first, then pulling the woman with her as she turned and broke into a run. They didn't stop until they burst out onto the main street, the bright lights and normal sounds of the city feeling like a different world. The woman, whose name was Rosa, was shaking. "My dear, you were so brave," she panted, her hand on her chest. "Let's get you somewhere warm," Catherine said, her own adrenaline starting to fade. She led Rosa to a small, brightly lit cafe called The Daily Grind and guided her to a booth. She ordered 2 peppermint teas, the universal drink for calming nerves. As Rosa sipped her tea, the color returned to her cheeks. She was an elegant woman, with kind eyes and beautifully styled silver hair. She looked utterly out of place in a dusty alley. "They wanted my locket," she murmured, touching the simple gold pendant at her throat. "It has a picture of my son inside. It's worthless to anyone but me." "They were just bullies," Catherine said firmly, the teacher in her taking over. "And bullies fold when you stand up to them." Rosa gave her a long, thoughtful look. "You have a very strong spirit, my dear. What is your name?" "Catherine. Catherine Salvatore." "Well, Catherine," Rosa said, placing a soft, wrinkled hand over hers. "My son is a very grateful man. He will want to thank you properly." Catherine just smiled, brushing it off. "That's really not necessary. I'm just glad you're okay." She had no idea that Rosa's grateful son was Carmine Moretti, the man the newspapers called the Wolf, the most dangerous man in the city. Across town, in an office that looked more like a rich man's library, Carmine Moretti was reading a business report when his phone buzzed. It was his mother's bodyguard, Marco, his voice tight with panic. "Boss, there was an incident. With your mother." Carmine was on his feet in an instant, his entire body going rigid. The air in the room turned to ice. "What kind of incident?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. When Marco explained the failed mugging and the unknown woman who had intervened, a cold, black fury settled over Carmine. Someone had dared to touch his mother. The thought was a poison in his veins. He gave a series of short, sharp orders. "Find out who they were. I want their names. And find the girl." It took his network less than an hour. Catherine Lombardi, 26 years old. Third grade teacher at PS 112. Lives in a walk-up apartment on Oak Street. Clean record. That evening, Carmine stood outside Catherine's simple blue door. He felt like a giant in the narrow, faintly smelling of cabbage hallway. He adjusted his tailored suit jacket, a strange nervousness fluttering in his gut. This was a debt of honor, not a business meeting. He knocked. When Catherine opened the door, her eyes widened. The man standing there was enormous, blocking out the hall light. He wasn't just tall, he was broad, a mountain of a man packed into an impossibly expensive-looking charcoal gray suit. His face was all hard lines and sharp angles, with a strong jaw and dark, intense eyes that seemed to see right through her. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice small. "Catherine Lombardi?" His voice was a deep rumble. She could only nod, her hand tightening on the doorknob. "My name is Carmine Moretti. You helped my mother, Rosa, today." He saw the instant recognition in her eyes, followed quickly by a healthy dose of fear. He kept his hands visible, his posture relaxed. "She told me what you did. You were very brave." "I just did what anyone would do," Catherine stammered. A faint, almost invisible smile touched Carmine's lips. "No, they wouldn't." He looked past her, into her small, cozy living room filled with books and student artwork. It was a world away from his own. "She means everything to me. You saved her, and for that, I owe you a debt. A very large one." Catherine just stared. This wasn't a grateful son bringing a thank you card. This was something else entirely. The way he said debt made it sound like a life sentence. He was terrifying, but there was a raw honesty in his eyes that kept her from slamming the door. "I don't want a debt," she said, finding a sliver of her earlier courage. "I'm just glad she's safe." Carmine studied her, the defiant set of her chin, the genuine confusion in her eyes. She wasn't playing a game. She truly didn't understand the world she had just stepped into. "That may be," he said softly, "but the debt is owed nonetheless. Be careful, Miss Lombardi." With a final, lingering look, he turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing heavily in the hall. Catherine closed the door slowly, leaning against it, her heart pounding for the second time that day. She had no idea that her act of kindness had just put a target on her back. Carmine's warning came too late. His rivals, the Volpe family, had indeed heard about the teacher who saved Rosa Moretti. They saw her not as a hero, but as a potential weakness for the wolf. A way to get to him. 2 nights later, Catherine came home to a nightmare. Her apartment door was splintered, hanging crookedly on its hinges. Her heart leaped into her throat. Inside, her home was destroyed. Cushions were slashed, books torn from shelves, her few nice plates smashed on the floor. It wasn't a robbery, her cheap television was still there. It was a message. A violent, terrifying warning. Trembling, she fumbled for her phone. She had only one number to call, scribbled on a business card he had subtly left on her kitchen counter. "Moretti Holdings." He answered on the first ring. "Yes. It's Catherine," she choked out. "My apartment, they broke in. Are you hurt?" His voice was instantly sharp, all business. "No. I'm just scared. Stay where you are. Do not go inside. I'm 2 minutes away." He was there in 90 seconds, arriving in a silent black car with Marco. He took one look at the destruction and his face became a cold, hard mask. He walked over to where she stood shivering on the sidewalk, wrapped her in his own heavy wool coat, its warmth and scent of sandalwood enveloping her. "This is my fault," he said, his voice thick with guilt and anger. "You're not safe here anymore. You're coming with me." This time, Catherine didn't argue. The fear was too real. He took her to a house, not a hideout. It was a beautiful, modern home tucked away in the woods, surrounded by a high fence. It was warm, clean, and safe. That first night, Carmine, the man everyone feared, made her a simple bowl of pasta. He was surprisingly gentle, his large hands careful as he set the table. "They call you the wolf," she said quietly, watching him. He didn't look up from pouring her a glass of water. "Do I seem like a wolf to you?" "No," she admitted. "Not right now." As the days passed, a strange routine began. He would leave during the day but was always back for dinner. They talked. She told him about her students, her dreams of being a better teacher. He listened, truly listened in a way no one ever had. He told her funny stories about his mother, about growing up in a big, loud Italian family. She saw the lonely man buried beneath the tough exterior, a man who carried a heavy weight. And Carmine, in turn, was amazed by her goodness, her simple, unwavering belief in people. She was a light in his dark world, and for the first time, he didn't want to extinguish it. He wanted to protect it no matter the cost. The safe house was a world of quiet luxury, a stark contrast to Catherine's shattered apartment. For 3 days, they existed in a strange, peaceful bubble. Carmine was a surprisingly considerate roommate. He always made coffee in the morning, left the newspaper folded for her, and was never anything but respectful. But the tension was always there, a silent hum in the air, the danger outside, and the growing pull between them inside. It broke on the 4th night with a crack of thunder that shook the windows. A violent storm had rolled in, and the power flickered and died, plunging the house into darkness. Catherine, who had been reading on the sofa, gasped. A moment later, a warm, golden light filled the room. Carmine stood in the doorway, holding a heavy silver candelabra. The flickering flames danced across the sharp planes of his face, making him look both ancient and incredibly gentle. "The generator will kick on soon," his voice rumbled, softer than the thunder. He set the candles on the coffee table. "Are you all right?" "I'm not scared of the dark," she said, though her voice wavered. "I know," he said. He didn't leave. He sat in the armchair opposite her, the shadows hugging his large frame. "But you are scared of me." It wasn't a question. Catherine wrapped her arms around herself. "Not of you. Not anymore. Sort of whatever this is. This is me, trying to keep a good person from being destroyed because of my world," he said, his eyes holding hers in the candlelight. "Is that all it is?" The question slipped out, brave and foolish. The house groaned in the wind. Carmine didn't answer with words. He stood up, a massive silhouette against the storm, and crossed the room. He sat beside her on the sofa, the leather sighing under his weight. He was so close she could feel the heat from his body. "No," he whispered, his voice rough. "That is not all it is." He reached out, his fingers gently brushing a stray strand of hair from her cheek. The touch was electric, a spark that jumped in the dark. Catherine's breath hitched. She saw the war in his eyes, the fierce control versus the raw want. "This is a bad idea," she breathed even as she leaned into his touch. "The worst," he agreed, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. And then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was a dam breaking. It was weeks of pent-up tension, of fear, of fascination, exploding into one desperate, searing connection. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her onto his lap as if she weighed nothing, crushing her against the solid wall of his chest. Her hands tangled in his hair, pulling him closer. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one they were creating. It was a kiss that tasted of danger and salvation, and it promised everything. The next morning, the power was back. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean and sparkling. They didn't speak of the kiss over breakfast, but everything had changed. The air was charged. His hand would brush hers when he passed the sugar, and a flush would creep up her neck. The way he looked at her was no longer guarded. It was possessive, awed. A week later he surprised her. "I want to see it," he said. "See what?" "Your world. The classroom." And so, Carmine Moretti, the wolf, found himself sitting in a tiny blue plastic chair, surrounded by 20 fascinated 8-year-olds. Catherine's students, who knew him only as Mr. Carmine, Ellie's friend, were captivated. He read them a story about a lonely giant, his deep, rumbling voice bringing the characters to life. He helped a little boy named Tommy fix a wobbly Lego tower, his large, usually dangerous hands surprisingly deft with the small bricks. Catherine watched him, her heart feeling too big for her chest. He was a natural. He was kind. In this world he wasn't a monster, he was a hero. As the children ran out for recess, she walked over to him. "You were wonderful," she said, her voice soft. He looked around the room at the colorful artwork and the tiny desks. This is real, he said, a note of wonder in his voice. This goodness. You make me believe it exists. He leaned down and kissed her, right there in the middle of the classroom. It was a soft, claiming kiss, full of a promise that terrified and thrilled her. The happiness was aflame, and it drew the moths. That night, as they walked from the car to the safe house, the world erupted. A dark van screeched to a halt, its doors flying open. Men with guns poured out. "Get inside!" Carmine roared, shoving Catherine behind him. What happened next was a brutal, silent ballet of violence. Carmine moved like the animal they named him for. He was fast, efficient, and utterly ruthless. He disarmed one man with a sickening crack of an arm, used another as a human shield against a hail of bullets. Catherine watched, frozen in the doorway, as the man who read stories to children became a force of nature, protecting what was his. It was over in less than a minute. The men were down, groaning on the pavement. Carmine stood panting in the middle of the carnage, his knuckles bleeding, his suit jacket torn. He turned, his eyes wild, searching for her. When he saw she was safe, the fury drained from his face, replaced by a stark, raw fear. He strode to her, his hands cupping her face, checking for any hurt. "Catherine," he breathed, his voice cracking. "Dio mio, Catherine." He didn't wait for an answer. He crushed her to him, his body trembling against hers. Right there, surrounded by the evidence of his world, he held her as if she were the only thing keeping him from drowning. Later, in the quiet of the bedroom, they didn't speak. The adrenaline had morphed into a different, more urgent energy. His touches were no longer questioning but sure, a desperate mapping of her skin. Her responses were just as fierce, a silent affirmation that she was not afraid. This was not the storm-fueled passion of their first kiss. This was deeper. It was a grown-up, spicy fusion of gentle reverence and fierce claiming, a physical promise made in the shadow of violence. It was two people from different worlds, choosing each other in the most intimate way possible, whispering secrets with their bodies that they were still too scared to say out loud. As they lay tangled together in the dark, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow, he finally spoke. "I can't lose you," he whispered into her hair. It was the closest either of them had come to saying, "I love you." And in the warm, safe darkness, Catherine believed it could be enough. The attack changed everything. It stripped away the last pretense of a temporary arrangement. Catherine was his, and he was hers. It was a fact as solid as the ground beneath their feet. Carmine became a man possessed by a single goal, which is to eliminate the Volpe family threat for good, to build a safe, clean future where he could love his teacher in the open. He laid his plan out for her one evening, tracing lines on a map. "It ends tomorrow, Catherine. Angelo Volpe thinks he can take everything from me. But he's wrong. This deal he thinks he's making, it's a trap. Once he's gone, the war is over. We can be free." Catherine listened, her stomach a knot of fear. She saw the cold fire in his eyes, the wolf ready for the hunt. "Just come back to me," she whispered, her hand covering his. "That's the only deal I care about." He kissed her, a long, lingering promise. "Wait for me. I'll be back before dark." The warehouse by the docks was silent, smelling of salt and rust. Carmine and his most trusted men moved like ghosts in the dim light. The trap was set. Angelo Volpe, a weasel of a man with cruel eyes, walked right into it, surrounded by his own soldiers. "It's over, Angelo," Carmine's voice echoed in the vast space. "You lost the moment you sent men after what was mine." Angelo Volpe didn't look scared. A slow, nasty smile spread across his face. He actually laughed, the sound bouncing off the corrugated steel walls. "You stupid animal. You think this is about me? You think I was dumb enough to target your precious mother?" Carmine went still, a cold trickle of dread running down his spine. "What are you talking about?" "I was trying to stop it, you fool." Angelo spat. "I heard a whisper, a crazy one. I didn't believe it. I thought if I scared the old lady, she'd run to you, and you'd see the snake in your own garden. But then that teacher got in the way." "What snake?" Carmine growled, his gun feeling suddenly heavy in his hand. The one who raised you? Angelo shouted. The one who ordered the hit on her own self to make you declare war on me. She wanted you to wipe me out. She thought that soft little teacher would make you weak, easier for her to control. It was all her. Rosa Moretti. The world tilted. Carmine's breath left his lungs. It was a lie. It had to be a lie. But Angelo was already pulling out a phone, playing a distorted audio clip. A woman's voice, elegant and cold, unmistakably his mother's. The Salvatore girl is a complication, but she makes him sentimental. A sentimental son is a manageable son. Ensure the Volpe problem is erased. Permanently. The ground fell out from under him. The entire war, Catherine's terror, the violence, it was all a game orchestrated by the one person he trusted absolutely. His own mother had used the woman he loved as a pawn. He found his mother in her sun-drenched conservatory, tending to her orchids as if it were any other day. When he entered, his face a mask of shattered stone, she simply smiled. Carmine, darling. Is it done? Why? The word was ripped from him, raw and broken. Rosa's smile didn't falter. She set down her watering can. But, for this family. You were getting distracted. That girl was making you forget who you are. A Moretti is a king, not a schoolteacher's husband. I created a problem so you could be the solution. So you would remember your strength. You hurt her. You terrified her. You put her in the crossfire of a war you started, he roared, the vase of orchids shattering against the wall. She is collateral damage. Rosa snapped, her composure finally cracking. I did what was necessary to secure our legacy. Power is the only thing that lasts, karma, not love. I did it all for you. The truth was a physical blow. He looked at the woman who had sung him lullabies and saw a ruthless, power-hungry stranger. There was no love here, only a cold, calculated obsession with control. You have no idea what love is, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. And you will never see me again. He turned his back on her, on the empire she had built on lies, and walked away. Catherine was pacing in the safe house, the clock ticking past dark. When the door finally opened, she rushed forward, but stopped short. Carmine looked hollow, defeated. His eyes were red-rimmed, filled with a pain deeper than any wound. It's over, he said, his voice empty. He told her everything. The trap, Angelo's revelation, the recording, his mother's confession. He watched her face, waiting for the horror, for her to finally see the monster he came from and run. Catherine listened, her hand over her mouth. But as he finished, her expression wasn't one of fear or disgust. It was one of fierce, heartbreaking compassion. She walked to him and took his face in her hands. She lost the most precious thing a mother can have, Catherine whispered, her thumbs wiping away the single tear he couldn't hold back. She lost her son's heart. And I am so sorry she did that to you. In that moment, any last wall around Carmine's soul crumbled to dust. He collapsed into her arms, burying his face in her hair, and finally let the pain out. She held him, this strong, broken man, and promised him without words that he was still worthy of love. They used the evidence, the recording, to ensure Rosa Moretti was taken into custody for conspiracy and racketeering, her power stripped away forever. There was no dramatic shootout, just the cold, clean cut of the law. A month later, they stood on a windy train platform, a pair of simple suitcases at their feet. They were leaving the city, its shadows and its ghosts, behind. Where will we go? Catherine asked, lacing her fingers through his. Anywhere, Carmine said, looking at her, his eyes clear for the first time. As long as it's with you. He kissed her, a soft, forever kind of kiss, full of a future they would build together, not one built for them on a foundation of lies. They boarded the train, two wounded people who had found a real and fierce love in the middle of a war, and now, they were finally free. My lovely gems, where in the world are you reading this story? Kindly subscribe to our channel and let me know in the comments which part of Carmine and Catherine's journey had your heart racing the most. And if you loved their forbidden romance, don't forget to rate this story from 1 to 10 right here. Your thoughts mean the world to us.